The problem I see with AI in city planning is not about the AI. And this is what I believe will be the trap of optimum efficiency in city planning. That yes, AI will assist in processing, optimizing transportation data, utility consumption data, processing traffic data, processing migration data, with data. But as long as it has to do with the socio-economic component of the environment, that is where a total reliance on AI would not produce desired outcomes. And this is entirely my opinion because, first of all, I believe that yes, professionals in the built environment are well versed in the physical component of that environment. So it's easy to use AI to improve their inputs into deciding, into creating, into designing, into influencing that physical environment. However, there is a disconnect across board. You see people who are technically sound, but when it comes to the economic aspect of that same environment, there is that disconnect. Take, for example, how for most of our cities, what the city will look like in 2050 has already been set, planned, cast in stone since as far back as 2010 or year 2000, which is not the problem because the essence of this master plan, of the master layout, is to guide and chaperone development, to help us, just like a football match, guide and set the rules for development, and then allow the physical, economic, and social components of that environment to play out in order to drive these outcomes. And the analogy that I've always used to describe this is how you cannot use AI to optimize a football match. The only thing that you can use AI for is the logistics, the data analysis, the fitness analysis. But understanding that a football match is entirely based on the ability, the agility, the fitness of each of the 22 players that determine the outcome of such football match. It is in that same way that if you want to use AI to optimize efficiency in the city, the best that you can do to just predict these outcomes. What we can do, however, is also influence the economic input, the social input. But as far as driving that outcome, the trap of optimal efficiency comes in when we try to drive those outcomes with such rigidity that it makes it hard for the plan, that it makes it hard for the layout to be flexible, to adapt to these realities of the social and economic character of the environment that it is intended to help build, that it is intended to help govern. And a perfect way to make this relatable is the story of that woman who baked that oversized cake that she needed 10 people to help her carry through her window because after she was done icing and decorating, the cake was too big to fit through her door. And just like the cake is how, because professionals are well versed in the technicalities of the physical environment, that makes professionals so overconfident in the assumption of perfect input for perfect outcomes. We design the physical environment, plan it, ice it, decorate it, stitch it all together without consideration for the economic vehicles that will drive and deliver the outcomes of the planning. And I think in there is the balance that as long as the master plan is intended to just be like the rules of a football match and it doesn't interfere with how the physical and economic and social components play out and only uses these rules as a guideline to drive the outcomes of the master layout, all will be in good order. But once we start implementing it in a bid to eliminate the messy vitality of the city, and that is what I believe AI would do to eliminate the messy vitality of the cities. Because yes, it is messy, but it is this vitality, it is the hustle and bustle of Lagos that makes it distinct. It is that interplay of its security network, physical network, its social dynamic, and how all of these different components play out that makes a city what it is. And once AI comes into that play, which oftentimes will be to sterilize that messy vitality, what is then likely to happen is we stifling economic, physical, and social potentials of the city. Another angle to this trap of optimal efficiency, which is what makes it hard to apply for something as large scale as a city, is how it is based on the average, on statistics. Because the city actually exists on a spectrum. The city is a spectrum. There is the high, the middle, the low, and there are the in-betweens. So how do we apply an average economically? When wealth is unequal, how do we apply average socially? When class is unequal, how do we apply average physically? When income is diverse? And even human expectation, exposure, level of knowledge, of understanding is different also across the spectrum. And so it is in planning an average for all these different diverse classes of wealth, of income, of social exposure, of economic leverage that will fall into the trap of optimizing the same zoning for everybody, optimizing the same density for everybody, or optimizing perfect outcomes for everybody. And it is why it is so easy for us to then start sterilizing the messy vitality of our cities. Take, for example, it is why we are constantly demolishing our slums in order to replace them with a more picture perfect alternative. It is why we keep building and enforcing the pedestrian overhead bridges instead of just looking into human behavior and human psychology rather than spending and wasting taxpayers' money. This brings me to the point that the human component of all of that is entirely based on human interaction in communication, in public enlightenment and public engagement. And that would be the best way that we can optimize human decision for driving the outcomes of city planning. To the point that yes, let's plan for perfect outcomes. Let's dream big for our cities. Let's desire beautiful things for our people. But at the same time, let's accommodate the flexibility of the socio-economic character of the people of the cities and not plan the physical environment in isolation of the social and economic components of that environment. I hope this helps.